how's it going, y'all? Let me know if you hear me loud and clear in the chat. Yep, it is the countdown. I know y'all love it. My name is Rosendo from MLH. Welcome to Global Hack Week, Cloud Week. I'm sure y'all are all super excited to be here. I know I am. Indeed, indeed. How's it going? How's it going, Neo? Thank you for confirming, Allison. I appreciate that. And thank you, Atarva. Yes. So today we've got a special treat for y'all. We've got Michael Hart from Cloudflare who's going to be joining us to help us understand and be able to utilize Workers AI, which is a really cool feature. Utilizing Cloudflare and the entire cloud console there, you'll be able to kind of use AI features and implementations via RESTful API. So it's a really, really cool feature to have, especially as you're progressing through some of the challenges that you'll have this week during Cloud Week. So yeah, I mean, awesome. I'm really excited to kind of bring him on stage. But before we do that, give us a shout and let us know where you're joining us from. And also let us know how familiar you are with AI and ML in the chat. And as that gets going, I'll go ahead and bring Michael onto the stage here and let him take it away. All right. How's it going, Michael?
Awesome. Yeah, good. Thanks, Rosendo. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Hart, as he said, from Cloudflare. I'm in New York. I'm in New York City, although that's maybe you can tell that's not where the accent's from. The accent is from Australia originally, but been in New York for a while now. And I'm an engineer here at Cloudflare and help build some of our AI products, which I'm going to show you today. So Workers AI, as Rosendo said, it's something that we kind of launched recently. We're basically, I mean, some of you might know Cloudflare as a sort of CDN provider or a security provider or something like that, but we also have this this developer platform where you can just develop your own apps using a couple of products we have called Cloudflare Workers and Cloudflare Pages, that we're kind of combining the two into one to make that less confusing. But they essentially just allow you to create web apps and websites. And recently we started adding, and we have sort of like 300 data centers around the world, even more, or 300 cities. And we started adding GPUs to our data centers so that we can start running AI models in them and allowing developers on our platform to use those AI models. So that's what I'm going to walk through with you today. Just getting started, how to create a worker and how to connect it to our sort of AI stack and run some different models. So some prerequisites getting started. You'll need npm installed and node installed if you haven't done that already, and you'll also need a Cloudflare account. So that's kind of basic stuff. You should be able to, Google and figure out how to do those sorts of things. And then I'm going to show you a tool that we have that we call C3. It's basically just an easy way to get started with a whole bunch of templates to create a worker. So I'll go ahead and I'll copy this into my terminal. npm create Cloudflare at latest. So what this is going to do is it's going to give me a directory. It just sort of auto-generated a directory. I'm going to create a hello world worker. I'm not going to use TypeScript and I'm not going to use version control, but you can use those things if you want. Nice little quick dependency install step. And I'm going to choose not to deploy it, but you can choose to deploy it straight away if you want. So that's now created a directory that I'm going to go into, and I'm going to bring up Visual Studio to show you what we created. It's basically some config files and then a very basic index.js file. I can run that locally. I can run that locally like this. Let's see. So that's spun up this worker locally, and you can see we have kind of a hello world, there. I can change it quickly and refresh, and there we go. So that's sort of the very the easiest way to get started with creating a worker, what we call a Cloudflare worker, that you can deploy anywhere. So I can quit this and run Wrangler deploy, and it should, if the demo gods smile on me, upload it. So it's uploaded it there to my account. Now, I had already logged in. If this is the first time you're kind of running it, then it'll sort of get you to log into your Cloudflare account. And then it's basically live. People can visit this. You can visit this. Yeah, that's kind of like the super quick. We call it. One of the other engineers calls it time to dopamine. Super quick getting started. You get that sort of dopamine hit straight away. Now, Wrangler is you saw me use Wrangler a couple of times there. That's the command line tool that you use for sort of managing workers, deploying them, and that sort of thing. The Wrangler.toml is a sort of configuration for that. And I'll show you an example of some of the configurations you can do. You can, for example, create environment variables. And environment variables are available through the env here. So I could, for example, place the value of my variable that I just created here and put it there. So you know what, I'm going to pop over the terminal here. Makes it a little bit easier. Let's do... Pop it open a variable. And then there's that production value. I don't know, we can call it... we'll call it people. So that's how you can kind of manage environment variables, and you can. These are kind of called. We call these bindings because you can bind to just simple strings, but you can also bind to a whole bunch of things like buckets, databases, queues, all sorts of things like that. And the other thing, actually, one thing I will show you quickly. If you log into your dashboard of your account, so dash.cloudflare.com, that's basically your Cloudflare account that you've signed up for. If you go down here in Workers and Pages, you can see the app that you deployed, and given a bit of time, we'd probably see some logging here. But one cool thing you can do is edit it straight from the browser. And now we didn't deploy it with our, you know what, let's go ahead and deploy it with those changes. We didn't deploy these, this little change here. Let's see if this is going to work if I just reload it. Boom, it does. Cool. So you can go ahead and, you know, just do whatever you want from here, and you can save it, and you can save and deploy straight from here. Now it's going to give you a warning because it's like, hang on, you just deployed this from the command line, but you know, are you sure you want to deploy it from your dash? But you can, and then you can see that it's live there as well. So that was just to demo that you can sort of quickly live edit in your Dash. You don't need to do it in Visual Studio Code or anything like that if you don't want either. So that's getting up a worker sort of nice and quickly. I'm going to walk through the steps of how you then connect that to AI. The first step being installing this Cloudflare AI package. I've made that too big. Okay. So that's the first step, npm install Cloudflare AI. And then we're going to add another binding in our Wrangler TOML. So before we had this variable, I'm actually going to get rid of all this. This is all just comments. And I'm just going to add the AI binding. So that then will allow us to, actually, you know what, maybe I can I disable, yeah, I'll do that later. This then enables us to run AI models, given the right code. We've got this AI binding, which means in env here, we're going to have something called env.ai, which opens up the world to all of our models that you can run on Cloudflare. So there's an example here. I'm just going to copy and paste it and then walk through exactly what it's doing. It's very similar to what we had before. It starts off very similar in that it has this handler, and this fetch handler is run whenever a request is made. And then we have this env.ai, which matches this. So if I called this something like AI binding, I'd need to rename this to AI binding as well. So that's basically the connection into Cloudflare's AI interface behind the scenes. And then AI.run is basically how you can run any of our models. We have a whole bunch of models. You can have a look at them on ai.cloudflare.com. We have things like text generation, text image, speech recognition, image classification, and they all have different names based on the sort of underlying model. We've tried really hard to stick with open source models that are available, and our implementation of Llama 2, which is a very common, or very popular, LLM. So similar to ChatGPT, if you've heard of it, but basically an open source version of that, an open source chat model. And so AI.run, and then the name of the model that you want to run, and then the context that you pass in will be different for each model. So, a chat model might have messages, but obviously an image model might have other things, or a text image model will have a different interface, and that's kind of all documented on our site. So we're going to see what answer we get back from the ML, from the LLM, from the machine learning model, and then we're just going to put it straight in the response. We can develop this locally before we deploy it, so long as we pass the remote. Okay, cool. So we got a response straight away. We're basically, asking the chatbot, or asking the chat model, what is the square root of 9, and then outputting whatever the response that comes back. So maybe, why does so many people love pizza? Its changes automatically restarted the server, so I should just be able to hit refresh. Well, it's thinking for a second. Oh, I see. Many reasons to love pizza, etc., etc., etc. Now you can see that came all back as one big blob, and it took a while. There's a mode that you can use to stream this data back, and I'll show an example of that later. But so that instead of waiting for the model to generate kind of the whole response, it can generate it word by word, and you kind of get more immediate feedback for people. So yeah, that's kind of cool. That's basically the way that you interact with models. I'm going to try something that I haven't tried before, which is to try another model and see if that's going to work. So this is a model. So that was Llama 2. This is a model called Mistral, which is another model that was released more recently that might be more suitable for other tasks other than chat, but for more sort of instruct-based tasks, getting the language model to do things that you want it to rather than have a conversation. But I think it should work for chat as well. Let's see what that comes back with. Just hit refresh here. It'll probably be similar, but hopefully it won't be exactly the same because it's a slightly different model. And all of these models, okay, yeah, here we go. It's one of the most popular foods. It is blah, blah, blah. It is delicious. Now, this sort of interface is great, but this is sort of our most basic interface. And what you'll probably find is that you'll probably end up using a framework instead of just sort of a raw hello world style, using this fetch interface and needing to, produce responses just like that. One of the frameworks that we have that was actually created by a Cloudflare engineer. I'm gonna go through this step again, this create Cloudflare at latest, and show you sort of some other examples of things that you can create. So you can create sort of a Next.js site, Angular, Astro, whatever you're kind of more familiar with. But a framework that we quite like is called Hono. It's similar to Express in a way, if you've ever used that with Node.js. It's similar to Express in that it sort of, it does all the nice things that you need. It handles routing for you and things like that. So this is an example of a Hono app. Basically, if the root URL is hit, then just respond with text. So you can kind of see how that's a nicer sort of interface to this, where in fact we don't even look at the URL being requested. It's gonna run this on every single request to our worker. Whereas at least with the Hono one, we could, I'll just make sure that this runs okay. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna try this and see if it just works. Missing an entry point. Yes, this is what I need to do. Okay, this is already set up anyway, so I should just be able to npm run dev. And we can open it in a browser. And it says hello Hono, which is exactly what we told it to. Now we can, for example, get it to respond to different routes, so that at the root route it responds like that, but we can hit another route and says goodbye Hono, and then we can add different get or post responders here, and it sort of, I guess it just makes it a lot more scalable to build an app, and there's a lot of niceties, a lot of completion available. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to skip these bits, but get down to the Hono bit. So doing a similar thing in Hono. Let's see if this works. All right, we need to install npm install Cloudflare AI. We need that. And then we also need to add, see, this is a nice thing about command completion. We also need to add, because we added it to our other app, we didn't add it to this one, a binding, AI binding, so that we can talk. And this one is called just AI. So this is going to do a very similar thing. Let's see if that's going to work. No. What did I do? I cannot. Oh no. Okay. Can I live debug this or not? AI is possibly. It could be because I'm following along this and it's a JavaScript file and I've just entered it straight up into a TypeScript file. It could be that. All right. I'm not going to spend too long on this. You know what? I think it's because I wasn't doing it remotely. So one thing you might notice if you have a similar issue. Let's see if this works. Hey, phew. Managed to fix it on the fly. Okay, so the reason I needed to pass that remote flag in is because even though it is running locally here, it's the binding that we define, this AI binding, is actually talking remotely, and this AI run, that's not running locally. That is actually running on our GPUs. And so even though I'm kind of developing locally and the server itself is running locally, whenever it's making a call out to the language models, that's remote. So that's why I need to pass this / remote here. But that's an example of how you'd then develop an app using a framework like Hono, which gives you a lot of niceties. It gives you the routing. It gives you all sorts of things like that. And again, I guess it's more scalable. It allows you to build out some of these things. And the next example I'll show of that is actually an example app that Yusuke, who is the author of Hono, actually created. That is called My First Work as AI. I can paste the link. Let's see if we can get that up if we haven't already pasted that. Get that link up, and then I'll clone that repo. It's basically the same. So to git clone of that, I'll go into it. Okay. It's very similar. Lots of nice red. Let's do an npm install and see if that gets rid of all those reds. Npm install. I might not have the right. I got rid of most of them. That's nice. This is a more fully fledged Hono app. I may as well just deploy it. Oh, cool. The deploy step is already specified in package JSON. So I'm not going to deploy it. I'm just going to open it locally. Cool. My first work is AI. I'm here to help. How can I assist you today? Ways pizza so delicious. Now you can see an example here of the streaming. So this is a more, a nicer to demo example of what we've been talking about. Behind the scenes, this is the sort of context that's being passed to the large language model. So to Llama 7, we're sort of telling it, you're a helpful assistant, do not respond as user or pretend to be user, and you respond in less than 100 words. So we've kind of told it to be short. And then what we do is whenever we get a post to this particular URL, we take the messages from it and we run it into our chat model. And then we use this very helpful method called stream text that Hono provides to stream it out into the browser. And that way, so here's where we do the post from the browser, and then when we get a response, whenever we get a response back, we kind of just append it to this box here. So this is a great example of something that's slightly more complex in that it's doing streaming. But if you're writing a chat app, that's often what you want, and that's the sort of thing that you want to be able to do. But again, the interface is sort of exactly the same. It's this AI.run interface, and you just pass the name of the model in, and it's got a similar binding here that would be defined over here. Binding equals AI. So yeah, that's available over here, and you can just sort of git clone that. So that's kind of basically everything to get started and to get hooked up into the models. If you go to ai.cloudflare.com, you can see some other models here, and you can actually interact with them directly to get an example of of how they work. We've got things like text to image models. Did that work? That might take a while. Generating images can take a while. We've got image classification. So, what is in this image, or what is this image of? Text classification, similar sort of thing. The embeddings is interesting. I'm not sure how many people out there know much about embeddings, but embeddings are a way to convert text into what are called vectors, which essentially allows you to then compare with similar text. So it can be really useful for searching and finding things that are similar. This example that I was walking through, I didn't go into the details of it, but it shows some examples of how you might use embeddings and store them in a vector database and look them up, which essentially allows you to fetch your own text that you might then feed into the large language model. Again, I can I'll see if I can post this link. But yeah, basically, there's our cyberpunk cat. Hey. Basically, with our aim with Workers AI is just to provide a super simple interface to getting started with some of these models that you might otherwise need to set up a lot of infrastructure. Whereas we've kind of made it directly accessible. I didn't deploy any of those other ones, did I? that's the power of developing locally. I was developing them all locally, which is kind of cool as well. But they are very easy to deploy and then have available straight. Let's see if I can deploy this. npm run deploy has access to AI bindings, uploading, option click. Yes, I want to open. Cool. So it's available right there. Yeah. How are you? So yeah, very, very easy to develop and very easy to deploy. Typical chat response. And you can try the models out and see our sort of model catalog here from ai.cloudflare.com. And look, I think that should be enough to get everyone started. Rosendo, let me know. Are there any questions that people have? Just browsing through the chat. Here we go. AI workers, are they the same or similar to AI agents? They are not the same. Workers is just a term that we used when we originally launched our sort of developer platform. And I guess the idea is that a worker is just an app. It's just an app. It doesn't have anything to do with AI or agents or anything like that. That was just the name of the sort of our developer product when we first launched it, called Cloudflare Workers. So Workers AI, it does sound kind of like we're talking about agents or anything like that, or something like that, but it's not the same. It's just our kind of development platform. Agents you can develop on Cloudflare Workers, though. We have good integrations with LangChain, if you've ever heard of that. Let's see. We have a blog about how to use LangChain and Cloudflare Workers together. LangChain is really good for writing agents. It's basically a way of stitching together some of these concepts that you might use with large language models, where you need to go and retrieve some text and then put that in the prompt that you then send to the model, and then maybe you get a response back, and maybe you do something with that response as well, like maybe you're summarizing a page and then using the summary to feed into another large language model that then produces a report or something like that. LangChain is really good at stitching those things together and comes with like a lot of very sophisticated patterns, and it integrates with all sorts of different SDKs and different APIs out there. So you can kind of mix and match. You can use Cloudflare for one piece, but then you can also, of course, talk to OpenAI, and you can talk to OpenAI straight from a Cloudflare worker as well, because you can kind of make any HTTP or REST calls from a worker as well. So yeah, that would be the answer to that. Okay, so can you explain why developing these workers is beneficial, and what's the purpose of them? To explain a little bit more in depth, it's basically just if you want to get a web app up or a website up, this is one way to do it. So of course, you can create a web app locally using Node.js or something like that if you want, but then you're going to come to a certain point where you're like, okay, wait, where do I deploy this? How do I deploy this? And there are a bunch of options out there. What we've done with Cloudflare Workers is just make that super easy, so that you can deploy. You can deploy an app, and then you can kind of manage it and edit it very easily, sort of straight from the web, from a web UI if you want, or from command line. It runs. They run all around the world, so these workers don't just run in one place. They run whatever the closest data center is to the user. And they also scale, to sort of millions of requests a second. You don't need to manage servers or anything like that. You don't need to spin up resources or anything like that. Once it's deployed, it's kind of available everywhere. That's the main advantage to kind of the Cloudflare developer platform and to the workers model, is that you can just deploy and it's available, and that it'll scale for you, and you don't need to worry about it. How does Cloudflare see AI workers shaping the future of online security and performance optimizations as they continue to advance in the workforce? That's a really good question. I think there's probably two parts to that, and one is there's inherent security issues with AI itself, and that can kind of come in the form of if you're developing an app where you're getting the AI to, let's say it's a chat app maybe for your company, and you want to give users some helpful information, but you don't want to reveal too much internal information or personal information. And at the moment, the world of AI is kind of still pretty young, and there are various techniques that people, are trying to use for prompt injection and things like that, where they try and get the bot to tell them more things than the bot's been programmed to. And then there are also things like just, I guess, the security of limiting rate limit. If you're talking to, for example, OpenAI's ChatGPT, you can rack up costs really quickly, because it can be quite expensive using GPT-4 or something like that. And you can talk to that from a worker, but you might want to place limits on that. And we actually have a product. We have a product called AI Gateway that is intended for that. So it's essentially the sort of security layer in between your app and the AI models that you're using. And you can do things like, try to prevent that sort of prompt injection, try to prevent users from doing resource-based attacks on you and things like that. So that's one part. The other part, obviously, is using AI to help traditional, security methods. And I mean, we do this a lot already, and have for a very long time with more traditional machine learning models, where we provide people with bot detection for their site and protection. To let's say someone doesn't want their site to be scraped by bots out there, they can add Cloudflare in front of their site, and we'll try and detect those bots. And the way that we detect them is using machine learning and artificial intelligence. And it's sort of it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, as the bad guys try to figure out ways around our system, and as they do, we make our systems better. And so I think machine learning and AI is going to continue to play a part in that part of I guess web development, and building web apps is assisting in the security layer that is essentially saying, hey, is this a bad guy or is this a good guy? Should I let this person through or should I not let this person through? And there are all sorts of sophisticated models for that. Performance. I didn't address performance optimization. That's a really good question. I think I haven't thought about that too much. Certainly, AIs are proving really helpful in terms of developing applications. GitHub Copilot, for example, is a great way to assist you in developing and kind of completing some code and getting through some of the tedious things. And some of these language models are getting really good at doing things like optimizing your code as well. You can give some of these more sophisticated models some of your code and say, hey, can you just make this faster? Can you make this function faster? Can you make this? Can you suggest some ways that I can make this faster? And some of them are really good. So certainly from that perspective, I mean that's more of something that happens at development time as opposed to at production time. I hadn't really thought about the performance optimization aspect aside from just like letting you as a developer write things in the best way and the fastest way possible. I guess there are, now that I think about it, so some interesting things that we do at Cloudflare is figuring out the best way to, for example, route a request. Like I said before, by default, when someone's accessing a Cloudflare Workers app, they're going to be served from the nearest data center to them straight away. That's not always the most optimal path, though. If you're talking to a database, if your app, is talking to a database that happens to be in a single location, then and your app is sort of making multiple requests to that database, then it's going around the world potentially for each of those requests, and it would be better to just have the worker run next to the database, make the calls there, and then return the response. And that way, you're not kind of going back and forth. And we do have a product or a feature called Smart Placement that you can turn on for your workers if you know that they're kind of talking to databases that are centrally located, or maybe even an API or something like that, a REST API or something like that that's centrally located. So I think AI can play a role in that, in those sorts of routing decisions as well. About what's the most optimal place, given this global kind of landscape, the most optimal way to serve traffic and to talk to whatever backends I'm talking to, that sort of thing. How much traffic can these workers handle? Hang on, is there a way to go back to the last question? I didn't answer it. They can handle a lot. I don't know if I can give exact numbers, but they can handle tens of millions of requests a second, which is probably more. I don't want to speak for you, but is probably more requests than you're going to have. In terms of, I guess that's workers. In terms of the AI models are rate limited. We do have a limited number of GPUs at the moment. I believe we're in more than 100. We have GPUs in more than 100 of our data centers, but we're continuing to roll them out and looking to have them in. I'm not sure about all, but certainly a lot more data centers next year. So there is limited capacity on the GPU side of things, so on the model side of things. What the actual rate limits are, I'd need to look at our site, but that's sort of something that we figure out on a per user basis. And for now, everything's in beta, so there's no like enterprise contract deals or anything like that. But I think once we turn this thing on in production, then it'd be a matter of working with us on what sort of rate limits people need. Can you provide specific examples of how Cloudflare's AI-driven security measures? Of how it measures what? I wonder. We have a product called WAF, which does what I was talking about before. For the most part, the sorts of apps that we've seen people building with Workers AI haven't been so security focused. We do have this AI Workers AI gateway, which does have a whole bunch of features that you can kind of put in front of your AI application, regardless of whether you're using our models or whether you're using OpenAI's or Azure or anyone else's models. You can kind of stick this gateway in front of your AI provider and get a bunch of things like rate limiting, request retries, fallbacks. So here's an example of some of the providers we work with. For example, you could build it so that if OpenAI's ChatGPT is down, it'll fall back to using Azure's, GPT model, or maybe one of Cloudflare's models or something like that. So those are kind of the specific features of the AI Gateway product. But the only other sort of AI-driven security stuff I can think of is the things I was talking about before, which is detecting bots, or detecting DDoS attacks and things like that. They all sort of use machine learning models behind the scenes. I hope that answers the question. Would it be possible to add security as a service APIs in Cloudflare to make it more secure? Security as a service. Yeah, I mean, I guess my main question would be what to make it more secure than what? This AI Gateway product is kind of our AI security product. And so this is the sort of product where we'd be tending to add AI specific security features, like, for example, prompt injection detection. Also things like to ensure that people aren't accidentally putting in private data like social security numbers, credit cards, things like that. AI Gateway is the place where you sort of detect that before you might accidentally send that on to your large language model. And also, there are companies out there that have policies around what sorts of things they allow their employees to send to some of these central models as well, like OpenAI's ChatGPT. They're very sensitive about what sort of data gets sent, and that's sort of one of the goals for AI Gateway is to prevent to be able to specify what sort of data you're letting get through to the model on the way out. Yeah, cool, makes sense. Yeah, the data security stuff. Yeah, that's definitely. I think. I mean, it's interesting because this is sort of it's early days generally in the industry around data security and around the sort of the things that are getting sent to large language models and the ways to detect these some of these prompt injection techniques and things like that. We're definitely, we're a security focused company, so we're definitely adding those sorts of features. But I will admit, yeah, it's kind of early days at the moment, and everyone's figuring out the best way to find that balance between, stopping things getting through that you don't want to get through, while also allowing things to get through so that your app is actually useful. Cool. Well, thanks everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone for all of your wonderful questions. Oh, it looks like we have one more. Do you have time for one more, Michael?
Yeah, sure. How robust are the SSL certificates provided by Cloudflare? I mean, they're pretty robust. I must admit, that's a question I don't know that much detail, and I don't know what would make an SSL certificate more or less robust. We're definitely well known for being a SSL certificate provider, and it's something that I believe we're very good at. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. Sorry.
No worries. Once again, thank you so much, y'all, for joining us today. It's been a great session. I feel like a lot of people had a lot of positive things to say about you, Michael. Thanks
Oh,
so much
cool.
for taking the time, and thank you everyone that included some questions in the chat. Shemari, Rothard Zero, and Munib. Very much appreciated amongst everyone else. And if you are looking for other ways to get involved and use Cloudflare during this week, just head over to ghw.mlh.io/challenges. You'll be able to use Workers AI and some of the things that we learned today directly in those challenges. And once again, thank you all so much for joining. So we're going to call that a wrap for the first session of Global Hack Week Cloud Week. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.